We will discuss standing issues facing India and Pakistan. All of that coming up after this break. Do stay tuned to In Focus. Welcome back to In Focus. We're discussing Pakistan-India relations and how the recent talks will affect what may or may not happen in the coming months. Mr. Hamid, once again, I want to come back to this, the burning issue of Kashmir, core to Pakistan, body swerved by India in many ways. The External Affairs Minister Krishna said that there's still infiltrations taking place by rogue elements coming in from Pakistan, whereas Mr. Qureshi said that there's no state or intelligence involvement in Indian-held Kashmir. Did Mr. Qureshi, in your opinion, and Pakistan roll over too easily over Kashmir?
See, he has been rolling over too easily previously also. Even when the Indian aircraft came after the Mumbai attack into Pakistan, they penetrated Pakistan at two places with the intention to bomb Pakistan. The first statement came from the Pakistani Foreign Ministry saying they came by mistake. If you just consider the border, line of control between Pakistan and India now, it is multi-layered fencing, minefields, radars, surveillance, drones. If still penetration is going on across the line of control, it only means the Indian army is a bunch of schoolboys. Whatever is happening in Kashmir right now is totally indigenous because the militancy level has reduced, but the civilian uprising has increased.
Yeah.
And basically now, the uprising, it's civilian intifada, with literally children with stones and sticks fighting the 500,000 Indian troops there. So, when the militancy level has gone down and the civilian population has gone up in an uprising, it's a clear indication that it's an indigenous struggle.
Mr. Gul, for putting it more in a politically correct way, some people are even referring to Kashmir as increasingly looking like the Gaza Strip. We see an uprising, as Mr. Hamid has mentioned, which is boiling over. Why, if you could explain to the international audience, why is Kashmir the linchpin between the dialogue between India and Pakistan? For the international audience, if you could help to explain that.
Well, it is the part of the unfinished agenda of the partition of the subcontinent in 1947. And the other side of it is that the Indians went because the Kashmiris started moving into, along with the tribal people of Pakistan, into Kashmir, and they almost closed up on Srinagar. They captured Srinagar airfield at one time. So at that time, Nehru ran to the United Nations and he sued for peace. And he said that we will give to the people of Kashmir the right of self-determination to choose between India or Pakistan. And there are those resolutions of 1949, not one but two of them. On that, Indian leadership agreed, Pakistani leadership agreed, and the Kashmiri leadership of that time agreed. So there is a consensus. The world community agreed. This is the only consensus resolution of the United Nations. There is a consensus between the contending parties that we will give to the people the right of self-determination. Now, India is a democracy, and if they are denying to the people of Kashmir the right of self-determination, what kind of a democracy is it?
I think Kashmir is one issue which is so contentious in many ways for both countries that it's probably going to be the last thing which will be resolved. And there are other issues which were sidestepped in these talks.
To add to what General Saab has said, if you kindly allow me, Quaid-e-Azam, the founding father of Pakistan, had called Kashmir the jugular of Pakistan. People at that time could not understand why a piece of territory could be the jugular. Maybe perhaps for emotions or ego or dignity. No. Now we understand it even more, that all 5 rivers, major rivers of Pakistan, flow into Pakistan from Kashmir. And India is blocking all these rivers, actually drying up Pakistan, destroying Pakistan's economy and agriculture. In the next 5 years, if the present rate of construction of dams and barrages continue in India, in Kashmir.
Is this in violation of the Indus Water Treaty?
This is totally in violation of Indus Water Treaty. Pakistan had sold 2 of its major rivers to India at that time. It was a lopsided treaty which favored India even in 1960, but it was done under the arm twisting of the World Bank. But still the 3 major rivers, including the Indus, including the major rivers which flow into Pakistan, come from Kashmir. And now Pakistan could afford to delay Kashmir dispute for 63 years. Pakistan cannot afford to delay water dispute even for next 5 years. And if there's not going to be war for land, I can guarantee you there'll be a war for water.
Mr. Gul, another issue, I mean, we're just going through the issues one by one, and this was quite prominent in the in the press conference briefing after the meeting of both foreign ministers, Mr. Krishna said that categorically, on record, that India has not been provided any evidence of involvement of RAW, particularly in destabilizing Balochistan. The prick and bleed methods which we've been seen being deployed across Balochistan. Interestingly, Foreign Minister Qureshi remained silent on the matter. If there has been any evidence which Pakistan so claims it has, then why the delay? Why not throw it on the table and say, there you go?
Well, the point is that the nation did not like the silence of Shah Mahmood Qureshi at that time. We have a big grouse against him. And the second point is that we don't want to show immaturity like India, coming up with evidence which will not, as I said, be sustainable in a court of law. So we know the evidence. The Americans have written about it. American representatives have come here in Afghanistan and in part of Zahedan, etc. And they have said that the Indians are playing game with Pakistan. There is no doubt about it. Before that, when Russians were in occupation of Afghanistan, the Indians were sitting in the lap of Soviet Union and they were trying to create problems for Pakistan. At that time too, the insurgency was going on in Balochistan, and that was inspired from outside. And as soon as the Russians went out, insurgency died out. And it has come up again because the Indians are now sitting on board the American ship in Afghanistan and they are trying to create problems. And we firmly believe that they are doing so not only to trouble Pakistan, but also to trouble Iran. Jandullah and other organizations are being created by the Americans. And the Indians are playing merry hell with Pakistani politics. And they are trying to create a lot of problems. But these are temporary, because as soon as Americans pull out of Afghanistan, all this will go away. The Indians are flowing against the current of history. The history is taking a turn, very definitely, almost certainly, in a direction which is not going to be helpful to India unless they resolve their differences with Pakistan, while America is still in Afghanistan.
Final word from you, Mr. Hamid, in this section. Again, we see a rather big disconnect, as General Saab has said, that Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi remains silent on the issue regarding evidence of Indian involvement, not only in Balochistan but elsewhere across the country. The disconnect here is that the Pakistani army is on record saying that they have recovered weapons and other equipment, military hardware, belonging to India. So why is there such a disconnect between the political forces in Pakistan and the military forces in Pakistan?
See, this disconnect is very obvious. This government is perhaps the most incompetent and corrupt government that Pakistan has ever seen. And Americans always assumed that by betting on corrupt and incompetent horses, like they're betting in Kabul on Hamid Karzai and here in this People's Party government, they would get the job done from them. But it doesn't happen. Neither the Karzai able to deliver, neither this government. And military, for its own maturity this time, is not willing to interfere directly and openly into the Pakistani politics also. It is letting the Supreme Court commit the coup de grace. Now, but the point is that army cannot even sit and watch and wait and see the national security goes down the drain, collapsing entirely under the foreign ministers and policies of this government. So you see this, that while this government continue to compromise against the Pakistan's national interests, the military sits in the background, but at one certain moment they make a move. Like, for example, at the last day of the last moment, the last session of the dialogue between Pakistan and India, the foreign minister was suddenly forced to change his tone to hawkish, and people were a bit surprised. But those who knew were not surprised because they knew the key was given from somewhere else, and Mr. Qureshi had to behave. And this is how the army is doing it. They're keeping a watchful eye over this government, not interfering directly. But whenever the national security is compromised beyond certain limits, whenever the red line is crossed, military does step in.
It seems, gentlemen, that both India and Pakistan's foreign policies are driven by their military doctrines. Very briefly, if you could just summarize the paranoia of India and Pakistan regarding each other's presence in Afghanistan.
You see, Afghanistan has always been a proxy battlefield for each other. Indians always use Afghanistan to stab Pakistan in the back. In the 70s, they were supporting insurgencies in Balochistan and trying to carve out Pashtunistan, the frontier region. They were trying to carve out into a separate province with the help of the Soviets. And during the Taliban era, there was no Indian presence because Taliban were strongly anti-Indian. That's why you find Indian paranoia against Taliban as well. And now, with the American presence in Afghanistan, Indians have come back